I'm Wendy Gray with Early Childhood Education in Douglasville. Thank you so much for joining my session today. I'm so excited that you're here. I hope you had a wonderful holiday break and you're ready to get this semester started. If you've been in my sessions before, you're going to see a little bit of what you've seen before, but you'll also see a lot of new things, especially for a virtual or online classroom. So with that said, let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about enhancing student learning. I have a quote down here from Mark McLeod, a consultant. I don't know what he's a consultant for. I just really liked his quote. He says, when the butt goes numb, the brain goes dumb. Think about it. We've all sat in meetings that go on and on and on, and we listen and listen and listen, and we don't have an opportunity to participate in any way. Think about what happens. Your butt goes numb for sure, but then we also start to drift. We stare out the window, we look around the room and see what everybody else is doing, and then our phone starts calling our name. We pull out our cell phone, we check our emails, scroll through, respond, and then we have no more emails perhaps, and we look at Facebook or Instagram or my personal favorite, Pinterest. And then the next thing you know, 20 minutes have passed and we didn't hear anything the speaker was saying. Our students do the same thing. We need to get them engaged. The human brain can only listen for so long before we start tuning things out. Like some of you may be starting to tune me out now. So let's get started. We're going to have some fun, do some activities, learn some things that hopefully you can take back to your classroom. The first thing we're going to do is play a little game. We're going to play a game called Educational Acronyms. And what I'd like to do, oh, you heard my chicken already. These are my buzzers. I have buzzers that I show. I love my buzzers because I'm early childhood. And so I have a chicken buzzer. My chicken is temperamental. Yes, I have a horse buzzer. I have a cow buzzer. I have a dog buzzer. Now, this is a great set of buzzers. Actually, a friend gave these to me, and I appreciate them so much. You may not be able to see them well because of my virtual background, but this is a set of barnyard buzzers made by Learning Resources. You can get plain buzzers if you would like. I like these because they make different sounds and it's easy to differentiate. You can also have your students download a buzzer app onto their phone. There are numerous buzzer apps that are out there, but buzzers are a great way to play games in your classroom. So normally, if I were getting to do this with you face-to-face, we would play educational acronyms face-to-face in teams with each team having a buzzer. But since we're separated by distance today, we're going to pretend a little bit. What I did was created this activity. I created a PowerPoint with educational acronyms in it for us to do specifically for our Faculty Institute. And what you do is I'll pop up the acronym, and then the first group that gets it hits their buzzer and names that acronym. If they get it correct, they get a point. If they don't, they lose that point. And so this is a lot of fun you can do with all kinds of things in your classroom. Once I created this in PowerPoint, I actually uploaded it to my private YouTube channel and put a link in my Prezi here so I can just play it as a video and pause it to wait for people to buzz. So let's try this out and see if it works for me today. It works most of the time. So education acronyms, buzz when you have the correct answer. I'm going to pause. FERPA, FERPA, anyone? Anyone? Oh, the horse team got it. FERPA, Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. Woohoo! Way to go, horse team. Yay. Oops. You know, you always have technical issues when you don't want. I'm not going to edit that out so I don't have to start all over again. All right. So FERPA was the first one. My next one, FAFSA. 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 Does anyone know FAFSA? Federal Application for Student Aid. I believe financial aid people, I may be wrong, but I think that's it. Let's look at the next one. WIOA, Workforce Initiative. Oh, my workforce people, you know this one. I'm sorry. This would be wrong for me. Goal. Goal. We just nominated our goal students, PBL. So you'll see I used some acronyms that we see at the college level here at the technical college. You could do this with any acronym specific to your field, to your classroom, but it's a great way. But you could also do a quiz on topics or content in your class this way as well. So buzzers, a PowerPoint running, is a great way to do this in your classroom. And again, I just did it a movie because it worked better inside my Prezi that way. All right, so let's talk about learning and what we retain of what we learn. If you look at this pyramid of learning, this shows the average retention rates for students. So students retain an average of 5% of what they hear in a lecture. So if a student sits and listens to a lecture for an hour with no opportunity to interact, they're only going to remember about 5% of that content. That's not much, is it? It's kind of frightening. If students read content, they're going to remember about 10% of that content. Again, not impressive. If students see audio visuals, so for example, we're listening, we've got a Prezi or a PowerPoint going, there may be a video in there, they're going to remember about 20% of that. If they see a demonstration, they're going to remember about 30% of that. If you involve them in discussion, here's where it gets exciting. They're going to remember about 50%. That still may not sound like much, but it is far better than 5%. So they're going to remember if you have discussion about 50%. I love discussion boards in my classes, even my face-to-face classes. I may not give them every week, but I do occasional discussion boards. In my online classes and hybrid classes, we do discussion boards every week because this is a great way for me to determine what they know, their understanding of a topic. And if I can see they're going down a wrong path, it gives me an opportunity to give them some remediation so that they can, understand that topic a little bit better. You'll see the further down the pyramid we go, if they practice doing something, which many of you do in our programs because we're hands-on. We're hands-on. I think of our healthcare programs, welding, automotive, our computer programs, our dental programs, our radiology programs, and I hope I'm not missing anybody. Criminal justice, you do some hands-on things too as well. And in early childhood, we do hands-on things. With your clinicals or your practicum, your experiences where they're out in the field, they are doing hands-on activities, and they're going to remember about 75% of the things that they learn that way. It's a very powerful tool for learning. But if you look at the base of this pyramid, look at the very bottom. Let's zoom in. We remember 90% of what we teach others. Let that sink in and let me repeat it. We remember 90% of what we teach others. So what does this tell us about our classrooms? Well, it tells us that in our classrooms, we need to be providing opportunities for students to teach others. So what's up next? We're going to talk about some ways to get students up, to get them moving, to get them having fun in our classrooms, to get them more engaged, and even do some of that teaching. One of the things that I like to do in my classroom are learning stations or centers. And this comes from my background as an early childhood educator. I taught elementary school for many years. And so centers were what we did. You moved from one activity to another. They were often student-centered, meaning students were in charge of the activity, completing the activity on their own. They worked together. They were interacting, teaching each other. And so that's why you see your early childhood teachers doing those kinds of activities, because we know what a powerful learning tool center activities are. And so I brought that into my college classes by doing things like you see on the screen now. One of the things that we did, we study infant toddler growth and development. And so we have these awesome computerized babies that the students will take home with them for several days at a time, which is really fun for my teenage students in dual enrollment who think it's cool to have a little baby until they realize it's been programmed to act like a real baby. It wakes them up in the middle of the night. It cries. It wants a diaper change. And so it is a computerized baby that has different types of cries. It records when diapers have been swapped out because the diapers have sensors in them. It records the temperature of the baby if the baby gets too hot, if it's been left in a hot car. It records movement of the baby, the head movement specifically. If the head falls back, they might get dinged for shaken baby syndrome. That's an automatic failure. But the other cool thing that we do with these babies, which are simulations, the hands-on piece where they learn that 75%, is we do center activities with them. And so what I did was, instead of giving an assignment on, how do you bathe a baby? What is the correct method for bathing a baby? And having it just posted in Blackboard or having a handout they had to do in class, I took all of these skills that they had to know about babies, how to bathe, how to swaddle, how to change, how to feed, how to burp. And I created these little handouts, and then I put QR codes on them. You can go online and just Google QR code creator. And so I created a code, and it lets you put a link in. And the links on the codes go out to either a video that they watch or an article that they read. And in this case, you'll see, if you look down, you'll see I've got a little yellow arrow pointing to the phone where this team is working on how to bathe a baby. They're watching a video. They're taking notes on the correct steps. They're talking to each other. They've got the baby there, and they also have a baby bathtub. And they're going to have to demonstrate how to correctly bathe a baby from top to bottom. So they're going to have to show that particular skill. The picture in the middle of the screen, you see students who are practicing swaddling a baby and what the correct method of swaddling the baby is. I've done this for many different topics. Another favorite that I like to do, we just finished in a class this past semester, was first aid. And so in first aid, they have numerous activities that they work on. They will, sorry, my controls get wonky when there's nobody in here and it wants to stop my meeting. So in first aid, they worked on correct use of an EpiPen. They worked on correctly bandaging a wound. They worked on what are the items in a first aid kit. They watched a video on CPR and filled out some information on what are the correct steps when you encounter an emergency, how many compressions, how many breaths, all of those kinds of things. So you can come up with learning stations for just about anything where you might have had them do a worksheet or an activity. Now you can take that same worksheet, but attach it to some real life object, have them go out and do the research on it. So instead of me showing a video on how to bathe a baby, how to swaddle a baby, I had them on their own in their centers do that, talk with their friends in their centers, and work on the activity together. Because they're working on it together, we have that teaching component. So if a student's not doing something correctly, they have 2 or 3 other group members to step in and give them assistance on how to do that skill correctly. So learning stations are awesome. If you're not using them, try them. They really, really work very well. And for some reason, I have turned on my annotation tool. Let me turn that off. Okay. All right, group brainstorming. This is another activity that I like to do. In the first picture, what you're going to see is students, this was at the beginning of our first class in early childhood. This was the intro class, and we were talking about what are the qualities of a good early childhood instructor. What are the qualities of a good early childhood instructor? And so I could have easily lectured and said, well, you need to be caring, you need to be patient, you need to enjoy kids, you need to be positive, you need to be creative. But rather than me lecturing on that, I had them come up with their own definition of what makes a great early childhood educator. And this is awesome because you can see what they already know. It's a great pre-assessment. You get to know what they already know. And so you can start to tailor your instruction based on what knowledge your group already comes to you with. We also did one on what is creativity. We teach a creative activities class, and day 1, I asked the question, what is creativity? What is it? We need to understand what creativity is before I can teach you the creative arts when dealing with young children. In another classroom, we discussed what is science. In our math and science class, we introduced it with, well, what is science? What is your understanding of science? And so it's a great way to brainstorm, have them talk with each other, interact with each other, and learn more and more about a topic at the beginning. You can also use it as a review strategy at the end of a lesson, have them come together, brainstorm what they learned. You may have heard like a parking lot activity. What further questions do you have? A parking lot activity, we use these in education a lot. A parking lot activities, you know how you have the main meeting and then people go out and have their sub meetings in the parking lot after the meeting is over. So a parking lot activity is you've had your main lesson, and then at the end of the lesson, you can have a sheet up. It can look like a parking lot. They can put sticky notes on it, like what questions do I have? What concerns do I have? What did I not understand about this? That's a parking lot. That's a brainstorming kind of activity that's a little bit more individual. Students can put their own individual spin on it. So group brainstorming is another exciting thing that you can do with your students. All right, another fun one that I've just learned is Trasketball. We actually played this in my class last week. We had a blast. Trasketball is so much fun. And I put the music note up there because how many of you remember that song? We're playing basketball. I'm not a great singer, but that came to mind, and so I had to put a little musical note up there. So let's learn a little bit more about what is Trasketball.
All right. Team Chi gets 1 point for the correct answer, no points for the shot. We use Trasketball during our review periods. We'll set a whole period aside for review to go over all of the lessons that we'd be covering on a test in the subsequent period. And basically, the review period is just them answering questions that just look like the ones on the test. The idea is that you give them a fun, sort of relaxed way to review those questions. So rather than just having them do a worksheet on stuff they've already studied, you give them an incentive to try to get the answers right. You get them to collaborate with team members over coming up with the best answers. And then, you get to have a little fun and keep things fresh.
Trasketball, I don't really know the origins. I know some of the teachers ahead of me had used it for a lot of time. It's just a review game. It's sort of like a mix between basketball and kids throwing things into the trash, which is what they like to do anyway, which is sometimes a management issue. So it just allows them to do that and get some of that energy out.
So the rules of Trashketball are simple. You put them into 4 teams, and every person in the class answers a review question at the same time independently. After maybe 30 or 45 seconds, they get to work with their team members to agree on a final answer. And then I have each team answer. So team 1 gets to answer question 1, team 2 gets to answer question 2, etc. Each team gets 1 point if they answer correctly, and then they get the opportunity to shoot the Trashketball and try to get more points, up to 4 depending on how far they are away from the trash can. The classroom manager, it actually hurts a little bit, because if they were just doing review worksheets, they wouldn't be paying attention much, at least during that period. But in the long run, I think if you give them the opportunity to have fun every now and then, it will help management.
Chose alliteration. That is correct. Why did you choose that?
Because it got the same beginning sound.
Yeah, it's got the same sound at the beginning of all those words.
Rather than having every lesson be just worksheets and them doing the same thing over and over again, they get to see the opportunity to have fun in school. So over the long term, I view Trashketball as a great tool for management.
Andre sings it from downtown. So team 3 has got 11 points right now.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Trashketball rules. So you want to post rules. My particular rules were stay in your seats at all times. They'll have so many seconds to discuss the questions and answer them. These are some rules I found online. Write a response. All teams hold up their answers. If you're correct, your team gets the opportunity to shoot from a 1, 2, or 3-point line. If they get the shot, they also get some extra credit. And so in my classroom, what we did was here's what mine looked like. So we were reviewing for our early childhood ECCE 1105 final exam. And this was on health, safety, and nutrition. So I actually created questions in Kahoot. I used the Trashketball template so that they could, I probably should have put that one first, but I'll show you in just a sec. So what they did was they had a question that they had to answer. You see the basket was originally up on my desk. We decided it didn't work great there. We needed a backboard. And so I scooted my podium over to the center of the room and put my little trash basket right in the front of it. I brought in a little basketball that I have that actually looks like a basketball. It's a little miniature. It's actually a little stress ball that I have, and I'll show it to you in just a second. But it's this little stress ball, and I only did a 1-point and a 2-point line. You'll see the team, this student actually chose the 2-point line. She was shooting. She got the answer correct. And the way I did it was I split the group into 2 teams. I had some online virtual students as well. And so they participated too. I used WebEx. They could see, I shared my screen just like I'm doing with you right now. They could see my screen, and we took turns. Team 1 went, then team 2, and then team 1, then team 2. I didn't actually let them collaborate on the answers. Each one had to give me their answer. If they got it right, they could choose to shoot from the 1-point or 2-point line. If they got it wrong, they didn't get the point, and they didn't get extra points. And then my virtual students who were online, they got to answer, and we selected someone in the classroom to shoot for them. So they were kind of their designated shooter. So this was a lot of fun. Let's see. I thought I put up, oh, yes, you could see it on the first one. Sorry about that. On the first screen, this was actually a template that I found online. I actually bought the template online, and it was pretty awesome. But all of my questions are set up. Questions are in the PowerPoint, and so they could pick the question from the PowerPoint and it would show up, and then they picked the, sorry y'all, and if I were doing this in person, this would happen, so I'm not going to fix it in the recording either. So Trashketball, they would pick a question would pop up, and then it would take them to the answer slide. And the reason I bought this template was because it was way easier than me creating it. if you're super good with PowerPoint, which I am, but it would take a long time. And I really wanted it to use fairly quickly. And now I can use it for anything. So this was a template I bought. This was Trasket Ball down here. But then I also did a Kahoot review. This was something separate. So I had similar questions, but two different methods of review for our final exam. And I was going to show you, let's see if I can go back to my video. Here's my little basketball that I found. It's just a little stress ball. I don't even know where I got it now. I don't know if maybe it was back in the day when we had basketball at West Georgia Tech, if it was a giveaway, or I don't know where I got it. Or if your kids have, if you have young kids and they have a basketball, a small one, you can use those as well. In these, you see some teachers just simply use wadded up paper. You can use wadded up paper, any kind of ball. I really wanted a basket that looked like a basketball basket. Didn't have that, so I just used a trash basket that I use at home that I put a plastic liner in, and so it worked out great. My students loved it. Even my quiet students loved it because it was something different. It's not something we do every day. It's just something that we did toward the end as a review. Now, if you did that kind of thing every day, it would be a classroom management nightmare. But it's great for once in a while to mix up what you're doing in the classroom. If you haven't heard of a gallery walk is a great way to engage kids in conversation. We're going to watch a little video in just a minute on gallery walk so you'll understand more. But what I did in my classroom, when you saw those brainstorming sessions from the very beginning on the large Post-it notes, I love the large Post-it sticky pads so I can hang them up on the wall. Students can walk around and see what other students had to say about a particular topic. And so I tried to think of some specific things to kind of hit all of the different areas, core areas, different areas here. So, for example, if you teach English, after reading a book or a passage, you can have students brainstorm, discuss ideas, themes, and characters, record it on a poster and hang it up. After they complete a lab in a class where you do lab activities, they can jot down notes about their findings. If you teach history, they can examine historical documents or images and jot down their feelings, their thoughts, their ideas, their understandings. You can use them before introducing a new topic to examine prior knowledge. And that's what I was doing in mine. What characteristics does a great early childhood teacher have? What is creativity? What is science? That's a great way to assess prior knowledge. That's how I do how I've done gallery walks. I've done other ones as well. After students have created a poster or any other kind of display project, you can have them walk around and talk about it. To solve a math problem, you can, if you're, teaching algebra, and you want them to solve a rather complex problem, you can hang up posters around the room, let them work in pairs or threes, and have them see how each other came up with the solution. And then just to generate ideas about things. And let's watch this quick video. This is a brief video on gallery walks, and she does a great job explaining it.
Some of the best lessons are able to promote lifelong learning on multiple levels, helping students develop the communication, investigative, higher order, and critical thinking skills that can carry them through college and beyond. Gallery Walk is a strategy that encourages aspects of all these skills while also offering students the opportunity to get out of their seats and become active participants in nearly every stage of the lesson, from creation through evaluation.
Students don't often get the chance to compare ideas or evaluate other students' work, but Gallery Walk allows them to do both. They get a chance to share their opinions on a topic, debate and investigate those opinions, and then they get to compare what they found with the results of the rest of the class.
In Gallery Walk, students work in teams to investigate a question posed to them in class. When each group has decided on an answer, they'll write out a team response to post in the classroom. Students will then walk around the room, stopping at each answer to consider the argument and evaluate it. keeping their own research in mind.
But they don't just passively look at something and move on. This whole strategy is interactive. Sometimes when they're walking around, I'll have students use Post-it notes to share at least 2 questions or comments that they have on each response. Sometimes I'll have each group elect a representative to explain their response to the classmates and answer some questions. Either way, the point of using Gallery Walk strategy is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to contribute to an answer, offer feedback, and to consider everyone else's thoughts as well. Then once everyone's finished going around the room, teams get a chance to go back to their own boards and revise their responses based on the new information they have.
This strategy can be used to approach a factual topic head-on or to encourage creative thinking using research.
In my U.S. government class, I've asked my students to pretend that the country has suffered a terrible disaster and that a new government must be created to take its place. I asked each team to come up with 5 laws that they think are essential to the survival and creation of the new United States. Not only do they have to research the structure and purpose of a law and then define what makes a good law for themselves, but on top of it, teams have to work together to figure out which laws are most important. Then all that might change again once they walk around and see what the other students have thought of. It helps students practice critical thinking and forming opinions, while still leaving their minds open to change if some new information comes to light.
There are plenty of other ways to encourage critical thinking and higher order reasoning skills on our strategies page at k20center.ou.edu. Leave us a comment and let other teachers know.
So I hope you liked some of those ideas that you saw in Gallery Walk. That's a great strategy that you can use for nearly any class that you teach. And again, each of these strategies, you don't want to try to do all of them every day, but if you use a variety of these throughout your classes, this is going to help make it more engaging. Maybe do a different one each class meeting or once a week, some different kinds of activity. Another great strategy we talked about, again, the bottom of the pyramid. Have your students teach a topic to others. You can do this in small groups. You can do, for example, in this one, we were talking about teacher-directed writing or interactive writing. And so they were working on an activity together. What are the steps? And so one of the students was teaching the other student how to do this. You can do student-led demonstrations, have them create a how-to video, do service announcements. I love to do public service announcements about various things because they fit nicely into my curriculum. I'm going to show you some examples because remember, we remember 90% of what we teach others. So in this first example, we've actually built into our ECCE 2115, which is Language and Literacy for Young Children, as our SLO, they have to create a 30-second PSA, a public service announcement about the importance of literacy. And so I give them several topics. For example, one of them is the importance of reading to children. We've been studying the entire semester. Why is it critical that you read to children, particularly birth to 5? The other topic was the 30 million word gap. This is where they discuss the difference between children who have a rich literacy environment and children who do not, and how they begin kindergarten with a 30 million word gap and at a disadvantage, which typically follows them all the way through school. The third topic was television as a teaching tool. And then we give them the option to choose some others as well, but they have to run it by their instructor. We developed a rubric where we tell them we're looking at the content that they present, we're looking at their verbal skills, we're looking at their nonverbal skills, their body language, their professionalism, all of those kinds of things. We're looking at the technical aspect. How is your set? You know, were you in your pajamas standing in front of your fridge? Or did you, as this student did, create a nice setting? Is it visually appealing? So this student actually created, and I can show a little bit of it to you. I could actually show you because it's only 30 seconds, and hopefully you can hear it. Her sound was kind of down, so she got a little bit of a ding for the sound, but she did an excellent job talking about the importance of reading to children. before we actually did it, we went through and watched numerous PSAs that may have aired on television so they understood. We talked about the concept of in media, in broadcasting, that commercials are allotted very specific time frames, 50 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever. And we talked about how businesses spend money on those commercials, but PSAs, public service announcements, are usually provided for free. They're usually about 30 seconds, and there's limited number of them, but you'll hear them on radio. You've probably seen them on TV, especially afternoon TV for kids. But here's the example of what she learned. The most important thing she could think about in 30 seconds that she wanted to tell others about the importance of reading to children.
Did you know that children who watch more than 4 hours of TV a day have low academic performance? Children who do so have a lower vocabulary in the area of language and literacy. The only way to increase your child's vocabulary is to limit their TV viewing hours and encourage your child to read more. Reading is fundamental and plays a significant role in your child's learning. Give your child a head start in their education by following these helpful tips. The more you know.
And so we use the more you know tagline that NBC used to run. She did a fantastic job. Like I said, she got a few points taken off because her audio was low and she was difficult to hear. But she overall did a fantastic job on this. I even took off points if they were over or under the exactly 30 seconds. And so they had to practice. When they first wrote their PSA, I had them actually write a draft of what they were going to say. And they realized that what they wrote took like 2 minutes to say. And so they had to pare down that PSA to the most critical things that they wanted to share in 30 seconds. And so this was a great learning opportunity, a great way for students to share what they learned about the importance of reading to young children. Getting creative, just integrating the arts. You may not think it fits within your topic, but there are so many things that you can do. Have your students make models out of unusual things. You know, have them create a song, a rap about a topic. Have them act out a topic. Use a little creative dramatics. Have them create a board game. I know one of our pharmacy teachers, our previous pharmacy teachers, was awesome with this. Her students every year, and she taught traditional and dual enrollment as well, but they created board games about things that they learned. And so that really helped them because they chose the questions. They chose the items that went on their board game. You can have students create a quiz for a topic and then give everybody the quiz. I've had students pick or create 5 questions for a quiz, for a review, for a test. And then we went through those and worked on those to help prepare for a test. The example you see here, this is actually something I did when I taught 4th grade. These kids are a little bit bigger than 4th grade, or smaller, excuse me. But I taught states of matter. So we talked about how in solids, liquids, and gases, those 3 states, not plasma, but we talked about how that the molecules are either closer together or further apart, depending on the state of matter. So we started with a solid. I had a hula hoop and had as many kids as we could pack into that hula hoop. And we talked about how easy is it to move. And so we understood that molecules in a solid are packed together and can't move. Then I had some kids move out, brought in a few more, and we demonstrated liquid, how you're more fluid, you can move around. And then I put one kid in a hula hoop, and they were able to pretty much move very freely. And so that was a great way to be, you know, to act out being a state of matter. So doing something creative like that is fun. Your students tend to enjoy those kinds of things as well. This is a picture I found, you know, just on the internet of a student created board game. Here they're using regular cards. You see they've got, Matchbox cars on their board that they've created. They've come up with their rules. And so you can have your students, based on whatever your topic is, do that as well. You can play games. You've already seen me use Kahoot. Quizlet's fun. Playing charades. Pictionary is fun with your students. Scattergories. If you haven't played Scattergories, that is loads of fun, where they have to come up with, for example, we're studying nutrition. And I came up with, for example, you have to come up with a list of vegetables, and you roll a die. And I usually use a virtual die. And so it has the letters on it. And most people don't have a letter die unless you teach elementary school. But you can roll a letter or use a random letter generator. And so, for example, when it stops on R, you have to write down as many vegetables that start with an R: radish, rutabaga, and then what happens is the students we go through and we talk about what we came up with. And if someone else came up with your answer, you both have to mark it off. So we're looking for the most unique names. But you could do that with so many topics. Jeopardy's a lot of fun. You can find Jeopardy templates out there online. They're usually made out of PowerPoint, super easy. You can find free ones. You can find some that are a little bit better that you have to pay for. You can do relay games. You see here, I have put a picture of some buzzers, examples of buzzers, different types of buzzers you can use, even a link to an app that is a buzzer. Here's an example. Normally, if we were in class, we would do this, but since we're not, and time is ticking, I'm sitting here looking at where we are. Okay, we're about 41 minutes in, so I don't want to get too crazy here. All right. We're going to go ahead and continue. I do have a link here in my Prezi, and what I will do is anyone who wants this Prezi, if you will email me after the Institute, my contact information will be on the very last slide. You can email me, wendy.gray, Wendy, W-E-N-D-Y, like the hamburger place, Gray, G-R-E-Y, like gray poupon mustard. And you can email me, and I'll be happy to send you a link to this particular Prezi. But you can click on this and see other ways to use buzzers in classrooms. They're a lot of fun. Scavenger hunts. This actually was courtesy of one of our nursing instructors. She introduced me to the scavenger hunt, and so I adapted it based on my particular needs. We study first aid and CPR in early childhood education. And so they went out and did this. I made it a safety and first aid selfie scavenger hunt. And so, for example, the first question, how do you contact campus security? Gave them a hint of the little see something, say something signs, and they had to take a selfie with the sign. And then here you see there were different things that they had to do. Those of you who talk about the MSDS, the material safety data sheets, they actually had to go find our MSDS notebook, read in it, and find how do you handle getting a specific chemical in your eyes, and what do you need PPE for this? And then here's one of my students who took a picture with the MSDS notebook. Again, I could easily assign this, but making it a scavenger hunt, letting them work in pairs, and then adding that selfie component to it makes it a lot more fun. My students loved that piece of it. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. So the center picture is actually my students. We were studying living and non-living, and we went outside on a little scavenger hunt, and we wore gloves. We wore little gloves because, we didn't want to get our hands all gross. And this was pre-COVID as well. But they had to go out and collect 10 natural things and 10 man-made things. And so they came back, and we talked about different ways that you could sort these. We talked about some people sorted by color, some people sorted by shape. It was interesting to see how different people sorted them. Some other things that you can do here, you see students doing algebra using dice, using a whiteboard. Again, not just solving problems on a sheet of paper, but doing some more interactive kinds of things with those. Here we see learning about you're learning about cells using slime. That looked like a fun activity to me. If you're teaching biology, you might want to do something like that as well. Some classroom strategies. I want to share just a few of these with you. There's a strategy called Think, Pair, Share, and one called Jigsaw. And you may or may not have heard of these in K-12 education. We use these a lot, especially in professional learning. So I've got, again, some brief videos I wanted to show you on these two strategies.
Hi, I'm Alex for Teach Like This, and this is Think, Pair, Share. Think, Pair, Share is a really easy strategy to remember because it first requires students to think, then pair up with a partner, and finally share their thoughts. You can do this strategy by providing a question or a prompt that provokes student curiosity. Students should then be given a couple moments, not minutes, to think about the prompt. And pair up students with close neighbors or desk mates and have them talk about their individual thoughts. During this time, they can evaluate which answers and ideas they think are the best, most creative, or most unique. Finally, students are ready to share. You can do this in a variety of different ways, and all of them are good. You can have students raise their hand, you could call on pairs, or any other thing that you can think of. The teacher or teacher's assistant can write the answers on the board for everyone to see. Now, although this plan doesn't specifically call for it, I like to have my students write their answers down. This will help students remember their original thoughts if they go second in the pair portion of Think, Pair, Share, and it helps students that aren't very confident with their answers become confident because they have to talk about what they wrote down. Hey, you never know. They could be 100% spot on right, and they wouldn't know it if they didn't talk about it. This strategy is useful because it helps structure student-on-student discussion. This strategy maximizes time on task by building in accountability at every level. Students that are gambling that a teacher won't call on them so they don't have to think about the question are now accountable to a peer that they're going to have to talk to in the next step. Think, Pair, Share also uses wait time that slows down the question and answer process that can often be dominated by overeager students. Additionally, students get to try out their answers in a small group setting before volunteering their answer in front of the entire class. Finally, students also rethink their answers and elaborate more on what they wrote when they get to talk to a peer. And as they collaborate, oftentimes newer ideas are generated. That's all for this video. If you have additional questions or comments, you can connect with me via Twitter, via email, or commenting down below.
All right. Let me pause for just a second. So Think, Pair, Share is a great strategy. I use it in my traditional classes as well as my dual enrollment student classes. Traditional students love that group time, that time to be able to talk with each other. And I always build in an extra minute or so because I want them to build those relationships, to get to know each other, to share their strategies. So for example, in my guidance and classroom management class, I pose the question, what is the most challenging behavior you have ever encountered in a classroom and how did you handle it? My students were so excited to be able to talk to each other about this, about what they have experienced in their classroom. The ones who are not currently in a classroom, we're fortunate in early childhood in that a lot of our students already work in child care centers in some capacity. And so a lot of them come in with their own stories, with their own knowledge, and they can share that even with the students who may not have that knowledge. Let's go back to Jigsaw.
Students are often able to understand complex or multiple texts best when they can be broken down into digestible chunks. Jigsaw is an instructional strategy that allows students to share the responsibility for each other's learning by being the expert on a certain portion of an assigned text. and ultimately teaching that portion to their peers.
When I have a particularly challenging or lengthy text, or even a set of texts that I need my students to read, I will frequently use the jigsaw strategy. This strategy also works very well if I have a text that is not especially challenging, but my students and I are in a time crunch.
First, I'll put students into even-numbered groups. Next, I give each group a text that has been divided into equal parts according to the number of students in the group. Either by me assigning parts or students deciding on their own, each student in the group receives a separate section of the text to read. I'll give each group the appropriate time needed to read their text. Sometimes this can be as short as 10 minutes, but other times the time may be much longer. I also tell each student that they are tasked with becoming the expert of their assigned section of text. After this time allotted is up and each group member has read their text, I give a brief amount of time for group members to teach each other what they learned. The goal here is for students to be confident enough in their knowledge to share it with others, and also to learn connecting content from their peers.
After group members have shared with each other in their initial groups, I mix the groups. And since I assign numbers to students earlier, an easy way to do this is to ask students to form new groups by ensuring that they are with different classmates, but each number is represented within the group. This is where the jigsaw idea really makes sense. Each student expert is like a piece of a puzzle, and by forming new groups to teach each other, they are putting the pieces together. Once in their new groups, students will share their findings from their reading with their peers.
At the end of using the jigsaw strategy, see that students have really stepped into their roles as classroom leaders, both by learning from and teaching their peers. How do you see jigsaw working in your classroom? Comment on this video.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip on. As you can see in the jigsaw method, this is a great way for students to teach each other, again, addressing the bottom of that pyramid. Field trips are another great thing if you can do them. These are some field trips my students did. If you can't go on one, bring an engaging speaker into your classroom who can work with your students. You can even do virtual field trips through Skype. Skype allows you to sign up, or perhaps you can work with a company. There are lots of different ways you can do virtual field trips simply by using your video conferencing capabilities on your phone and projecting that to your students. Feedback and summarizers, there are lots of different activities here. These are some links. Again, if you would like to look at these links, different types of summarizers, graphic organizers, using a ticket out the door. These, I'll be happy to send you a link so that you can do a little bit more research. These are engaging as well. Where can you find some ideas? I found different ideas on Teachers Pay Teachers. Actually, that initial QR code activity with babies, I found on Teachers Pay Teachers. And then I used it as a model to create my own. And on Teachers Pay Teachers, you can find stuff that's free. You can find stuff that you pay for. If you can create things, you can actually post them on Teachers Pay Teachers as well. All right, last piece. What about virtual or online learning? So one of the biggest issues with online learning is that students feel disconnected. Whether you're teaching completely online or you hold virtual class meetings, there are some ways to increase that student connection and learning. You can do things like create videos or have live meetings to connect with your class. That's one of the things that I did this semester. Was I actually, for one of my online classes, I would create weekly videos and do a little mini lecture with them and post a link to the lecture online to help them feel a little bit more connected. You're going to notice my big show your face. Why? There are reasons. You want to show your face as much as you possibly can. I read an article and I pulled some highlights here that I thought were really fun. Nobody wants to hear a disembodied voice. It's not nearly as interesting as seeing you in action, seeing you smile, seeing your hand gestures, seeing how much you enjoy what it is that you're doing. Talking directly into that camera stimulates that personal connection and maintains engagement, reduces that feeling of isolation, and your facial expressions speak volumes. And so we want to be sure that we're showing our face as much as we can. Another bonus, if we're teaching from home, we can see each other's pets. Sometimes I show my pets in my videos. Check out what my dog is doing, or she'll jump up. And you'll notice I look like I'm sitting in just a beautiful setting here. This is actually a virtual background. I'm in my home office, which is kind of messy, and I didn't want you to see that. So virtual backgrounds are great for making an interesting setting. I could be on the beach if I wanted. It's really neat using those virtual backgrounds. You can do some we know that active participation means more learning. Remember that pyramid. Do things like those icebreakers, puzzles, presentations, pitches, peer reviews, virtual field trips, all of these kinds of things. Use those features of your meeting tool. If it offers breakout rooms, learn about those. If you can use polling, incorporate some other tools that you'll find out there. Learning games, word clouds, Wordle is one that I like, quizzes, using gamification. There are actually sites where you can build your own little games to help teach or engage students in your classroom. You may have heard of Bloom's taxonomy. As an education major in school, we lived and learned Bloom's. Also, Bloom's has been revised for more of a virtual experience now. And you'll see the very base of the pyramid here is remembering. That's really the lowest form of learning. Remembering is just very basic recall. Understanding, the higher we go up Bloom's pyramid, the more deeply students are engaged in learning. And these are some examples of some tools that you can use to help meet your students at each of these areas. So if you're up here at creating, this is where they're actually applying information that they've learned in your classroom. Wiki Spaces, I'm not sure that's still out there, but Prezi, VoiceThread is a great one that I've used. Glogster's great. But you'll see that there are lots of tools here that you can actually experiment with. Some more tips, pick that right tool, test it out. I really like WebEx, which is what I'm using today, but Collaborate's starting to grow on me. I'm actually training the rest of my staff, or the rest of my team on Monday. We're going to learn how to use some of the tools in Blackboard Collaborate. Make sure you send invites if you're doing a virtual learning experience. Make sure instructions are clear so people know how to get into your virtual meeting. Keep it secure. Use a waiting room to control who gets in. Don't post your link on a public site. Password protected if you can. We've heard about Zoom meetings and things getting hacked. Oops, excuse me. We actually had a meeting with some dual enrollment. We had an open house kind of meeting, and we had someone hack in with some horrible language. And so just be really, really careful about that. Set ground rules about, your camera should be on so that you're engaged. You should be using the chat to ask questions, not have a constant conversation. You want to follow what we call micro-learning principles. That means we want to chunk information into smaller chunks that are easily digested. So no more than 45 minutes at a time for adults. Less is really better. If you can stick to little chunks of, a 20-minute clip here and there, that helps tremendously. If you're doing a face-to-face meeting, about 45 minutes is about max. People get tired at that point. Record your lessons so people can go back and watch them, and check in periodically. If you're teaching just purely online, check in with your students like you would in a face-to-face class. If you haven't heard from them online, send them an email, give them a call, figure out what's going on with them. So those are my tips for enhancing student learning. I hope you got some great ideas today that you can use, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year. Have a great day. Bye.